At Brighton International Airport, a Marine captain is inexplicably barred from boarding. He holds orders to escort a fallen soldier home, but time slips away as the crowd gathers. What hidden struggle looms behind the ticket scanner, and who will defend an honor that can't wait? Captain Darren Harlow stood under the midday sun at Brighton International Airport, his neatly pressed uniform contrasting sharply with the chaos unfolding around him. As a decorated Marine Corps officer, he was no stranger to protocol, nor was he a stranger to the emotional weight he now carried. Inside a cargo hold on the tarmac lay the remains of Private Avery Thompson, a soldier who had fallen in the line of duty. Captain Harlow's solemn task was to escort Avery home to her grieving family. In the bustling terminal, families wrangled children, business travelers hustled with laptops in hand, and tourists fretted over connecting flights. Captain Harlow moved with calm determination toward the airline check-in counter, a slim folder of official documents tucked under his arm. He had done escorts before, always a sad duty, but one handled with unwavering reverence. When he handed his paperwork to the agent behind the desk, she offered a polite smile, then studied the documents. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. "Sir," she began, "there seems to be a problem with your ticket reservation." Captain Harlow raised an eyebrow. "A problem?" he asked quietly, doing his best to remain courteous. "I've checked and rechecked everything with my unit. All is in order." The agent glanced at a co-worker, who shuffled closer to read the screen. Their hushed conversation was tense enough to draw the attention of nearby travelers. Finally, she turned to face him again, her voice lowered as if bracing for a confrontation. "I'm sorry, Captain," she said, "but I can't allow you to board at this time. The system has flagged your ticket. I need to speak to my supervisor." Harlow felt a knot form in his stomach. While he was well prepared to deal with standard security procedures, he never imagined being stopped under these circumstances, especially not when a fallen soldier, someone who had given everything, was relying on him to see this journey through. He glanced at the folder of documents in his hand. The official escort orders, the clearance letters, the paperwork for Private Thompson's transfer. Every box had been checked, every regulation followed. Yet here he was, standing in an airport terminal, met by an inexplicable obstacle. Swallowing his frustration, Captain Harlow cleared his throat. "I'm on official military business," he said, tapping the papers gently on the counter. "Could you please tell your supervisor that delaying this flight is not an option? I have a soldier to escort home." The agent nodded, flushing with a mixture of anxiety and sympathy. "I'll get him right away," she said, turning to disappear into the cluster of offices behind the check-in area. Darren Harlow stood his ground, every minute feeling like an injustice against Private Thompson's memory. As the travelers around him moved on with their day, unaware of the sacred duty unfolding, he couldn't shake the sense that something deeply wrong was happening. Captain Harlow waited in uneasy silence, his eyes scanning the crowd behind him. Most travelers wore the familiar expressions of airport fatigue, anxious about security lines or lost luggage. But a handful had noticed him in uniform, locked in an apparent standoff at the check-in counter. A whisper here, a curious glance there. No one yet understood the gravity of what was at stake. Moments later, a tall, grey-haired supervisor strode out from a back office, his name badge flashing under the fluorescent lights. He stopped in front of Captain Harlow, gave a brief nod, then shot a wary look at the agent. "Sir, I'm Mr. Callahan, the duty manager," he said, his tone brisk and professional. "I understand there's a complication with your ticket." Captain Harlow handed over his documentation. "I'm escorting the remains of Private Avery Thompson," he explained. "All the paperwork should be in order. I've done this before, and I've never been denied boarding." Callahan's eyes flicked over the forms, pausing on the official seals and signatures. He pursed his lips, then glanced at the computer screen where the agent had originally flagged the ticket. The tension in his posture only deepened. "Captain, I'm afraid the airline system has triggered a security protocol," he said carefully. "I realize this is an unfortunate situation, but until we've cleared it, we can't allow you to board." "Security protocol?" Harlow repeated, doing his best to remain calm. "These are official United States Marine Corps orders. Whatever the issue, we need to solve it now. I can't delay." A quiet hush settled over the group of onlookers. Passengers who'd decided missing a few minutes of their own travel time was worth seeing how this might resolve. A tall man in a ball cap frowned in disbelief. A young woman clutched her phone, recording the interaction with shaky hands. Callahan tried to maintain a veneer of composure. "I'm sorry. I've got to confer with upper management. They'll need to override the restriction manually." Captain Harlow's jaw tightened. "Then by all means confer," he said. "But understand this. A fallen soldier's final journey is at stake. I won't leave without that casket." The crowd stirred with hushed indignation. A few people pulled out their phones, either to film or to check social media. The tension had gone from a faint note to a palpable chorus. Meanwhile, Harlow stood rooted in place, uniform crisp, expression set with quiet determination. He'd faced insurgents and firefights overseas. He would not back down from red tape and misdirected policy here at home. "Please wait here," Callahan said, clearly flustered as he turned to hurry away. The agent at the counter was left avoiding eye contact, her expression a mixture of sympathy and nerves. As the supervisor disappeared around a corner, Captain Harlow cast a slow look around the terminal. He couldn't help feeling a profound sense of injustice. "We talk about honoring those who serve," he thought. "Yet here I am, stuck in an airline bureaucracy." Several more travelers edged closer. One man, sporting a worn Vietnam veteran patch on his jacket, gave the captain a knowing nod. "You're doing right by that young soldier," the man said quietly. "The rest of us stand behind you." In that moment, Harlow realized he was no longer alone in his struggle. People who understood sacrifice, who recognized the significance of a military escort, were rallying around him. But would that support be enough to break through the airline's cold protocol in time? 5 minutes stretched into 10, and still no sign of Mr. Callahan or any upper management. Impatient murmurs rippled through the line of waiting passengers, some glancing nervously at their watches, others shifting their carry-ons to get a better view of the scene. Captain Harlow stood at the counter, arms at his sides but shoulders stiff. He sensed onlookers drawing closer, people with camera phones aimed discreetly, or not so discreetly, in his direction. Normally, he'd have preferred to keep any confrontation private, but he knew he had nothing to hide. He was fighting for a soldier who could no longer speak for herself. A young woman in a blue windbreaker gently approached him. "Excuse me, Captain," she said, her voice trembling. I don't want to intrude, but I heard you mention you're escorting a fallen Marine." He nodded, lips pressed tight. "That's right. Private Avery Thompson. I'm supposed to be on this flight to bring her home." The woman's eyes glistened. "My brother served in the army," she said, barely above a whisper. I just want you to know I'm sorry this is happening. If there's anything I can do, maybe, I don't know, share a message on social media." Her voice trailed off. Captain Harlow managed a grateful smile. "Thank you. That kind of support might help people understand what's at stake." With that, the woman scurried back, phone in hand, presumably already typing an impassioned post. Others nearby gave nods of encouragement. A bearded man in a flannel shirt muttered, "This is insane," under his breath, shaking his head as he recorded a short video. Within moments, the tension in the terminal began to climb, like a pot on the verge of boiling over. Strangers were talking to each other, united by shock that a uniformed officer could be barred from boarding while on a solemn duty. The energy turned from curiosity to outrage. Then, from the corner of his eye, Harlow caught a glimpse of a security officer stepping forward, wearing a distinct airport badge and a cautious expression. The officer placed himself a few paces away, not interfering, but watching closely. Perhaps management had called security as a precaution. If so, it only served to stoke the crowd's sense of injustice. This wasn't about a threat. This was about needless red tape tangling up an honorable mission. A woman holding a restless toddler bumped her stroller to the side, clearing a makeshift space in the middle of the gate area. Captain Harlow glanced around, realizing that nearly 24 people had clustered into a loose circle, practically forming an impromptu audience. He straightened his shoulders. Stay calm, he reminded himself. This was bigger than his personal frustration. It was about showing the world that fallen service members deserved a level of respect and dignity that should never be up for debate or delayed. After a few more minutes, Mr. Callahan reappeared, an anxious glaze over his eyes, as though he'd been caught in a hailstorm. This time, a woman in a tailored suit accompanied him, her ID badge identifying her as an airline manager. The two approached Captain Harlow, their postures stiff with forced professionalism. Captain Harlow, the woman began. I'm Ms. Donovan, one of the airline's district managers. We apologize for the inconvenience. There appears to be a glitch in our system that triggered extra security measures on your reservation. Harlow noted how she carefully avoided looking directly at the onlooking crowd. And when can you fix this glitch? He asked, struggling to maintain his composure. Soon, Ms. Donovan assured him, her smile wavering. We're working on an override. In the meantime, we'd like to, offer you a meal voucher and a seat on the next available flight. A collective hush swept over the crowd. It was as if the entire gate area held its breath, waiting to see how Harlow would respond. He inhaled slowly, then spoke in a low, measured tone. Ms. Donovan, with all due respect, I'm not here to collect a meal voucher. I'm here to escort Private Thompson so her family can lay her to rest. This flight is crucial, and I can't afford another delay. The last word landed with a quiet, stinging force. The few people near enough to hear him clearly seemed to bristle on his behalf. How could they offer him a mere meal voucher while he was fulfilling such a solemn duty? A man in a USMC ball cap stepped forward. He'd been watching from the sidelines, the insignia suggesting he too had served. This is ridiculous, he barked at Ms. Donovan. You think a free sandwich is going to fix this? His voice trembled with controlled anger. He's got a fallen Marine to bring home. Donovan blinked, thrown off by the blunt confrontation. Callahan looked equally uncomfortable. Captain Harlow gave a curt nod to the Marine vet, silently grateful for the support. All around them, camera phones were rolling, capturing the tense standoff. Harlow realized that if the airline thought this problem would stay quiet, they were sorely mistaken. A spark of hope flickered in him. Maybe public pressure would force the airline to expedite the fix. Yet as Ms. Donovan and Mr. Callahan exchanged nervous glances, the uneasy feeling in Harlow's gut only grew. He couldn't shake the fear that bureaucratic inertia might still rob Private Thompson of the dignified journey she so rightly deserved. An almost electric tension filled the air as onlookers exchanged incredulous glances. Phones were raised, capturing every word. Captain Harlow could hear the low hum of people whispering, some outraged on his behalf, others deeply moved by the weight of his duty. From the corner of his eye, he spotted at least 2 travelers live-streaming the situation on social media. Ms. Donovan cleared her throat. "Captain, we fully respect your military service and the sacrifice of Private Thompson. We're trying to resolve the security override as fast as possible. We just ask for a bit more." Her words were drowned out by a distinctive beep from a nearby smartphone. The young woman in the blue windbreaker, who'd offered to help earlier, spoke up, eyes wide. "It's already trending," she said, holding her phone aloft. Others in the crowd murmured in surprise, leaning in to see. Tweets, status updates, and video snippets were popping up, each describing a uniformed Marine being denied the ability to accompany a fallen soldier. Shock and criticism radiated through every comment thread, fueling a wave of public disapproval. The tension at the counter rose another notch. Ms. Donovan's gaze flicked to Mr. Callahan, her expression shifting to something akin to alarm. They both realized this was no ordinary passenger complaint. This was a viral moment, and time was running out to prevent a full-blown PR crisis. Captain Harlow kept his composure, but inside he felt a swirl of relief and unease. Relief, because with the public spotlight shining on the situation, the airline might accelerate their efforts. Unease, because he didn't relish the idea of turning a solemn mission into a media firestorm. He only wanted to give Private Thompson the honor she deserved. Suddenly, the Vietnam veteran in the worn jacket stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Ma'am, sir," he said, nodding respectfully to Ms. Donovan and Mr. Callahan. "I served 2 tours. I've seen what our men and women in uniform give up. You're risking a lot more than bad press by stalling this escort." Others in the crowd murmured in agreement, some calling out, "Let him board," or "Do the right thing." A wave of indignation crested through the gate area. Ms. Donovan's eyes darted from the uniformed captain to the camera phones. We're waiting on final confirmation," she managed. "I assure you, we'll have Captain Harlow cleared to board the next possible flight." "The next possible flight?" someone echoed, their tone incredulous. "He should be on this flight." All eyes turned to the digital departure board overhead. The flight was set to leave in 25 minutes. If the airline didn't fix their system soon, Captain Harlow would indeed miss it. A heavy silence fell. The seconds ticked by. Captain Harlow felt his pulse thudding in his ears. Private Thompson's casket was likely already loaded onto the aircraft, as is customary for military honors. The idea of leaving that plane without her was unthinkable. Finally, Ms. Donovan's phone buzzed. She took a shaky breath as she answered. The conversation was brief, punctuated by curt acknowledgements. When she hung up, she looked up at Captain Harlow, her expression unreadable. "Captain," she began, "they've managed to bypass the security error. You're cleared to board." A sigh of relief rippled through the crowd, followed by soft applause. Yet Ms. Donovan didn't look triumphant. She looked rattled by how close the airline had come to a public relations nightmare. Mr. Callahan stood by, head bowed slightly, as if overwhelmed by the magnitude of it all. Captain Harlow inclined his head in a show of calm respect. "Thank you," he said, voice taut with emotion. "I appreciate your help in getting me on board." He stepped away from the counter, heading for the corridor that led to his gate. Around him, passengers quietly stepped aside to let him pass. Many offered hushed words of support, pats on the shoulder, even salutes. As he walked, he realized that in their own way, they were saluting not just him, but Private Thompson as well. Yet in the back of his mind, a single question lingered. Would this resolution truly address the deeper disrespect he had encountered, or would it be brushed aside as a system glitch and forgotten once the spotlight faded? The gate area was unusually silent as Captain Harlow approached. People milling around looked up from their seats. Some recognized him from the commotion at the check-in counter. Others seemed to sense something important was about to happen. A hushed reverence filled the air, as though everyone understood a solemn moment had arrived. Stepping forward, he greeted the airline attendant scanning boarding passes, a young man whose eyes darted nervously to Harlow's uniform. Without a word, the attendant acknowledged the override in the system and waved him through. There was no further explanation, no apology, just a silent acquiescence to the sudden publicity swirling around them. Once inside the jet bridge, Captain Harlow felt the weight of everything settle on his shoulders. The relief at being allowed to board mingled with frustration that he'd had to fight so hard in the first place. He briefly closed his eyes, recalling Private Thompson's smiling face from a faded photo her squadmate had shown him. "You're almost home," he thought. After a short walk, he stepped into the airplane cabin. A few passengers already seated glanced up, curiosity dancing in their expressions. Up front, a flight attendant wearing a crisp uniform motioned him over. "Captain," she said softly, "my name's Riley. I'll be assisting you today. I heard about what happened back there." Her tone was gentle, underpinned with genuine empathy. Harlow nodded. "Thank you, Riley. My main concern is Private Thompson. I'd like to—" Before he could finish, the intercom chirped, and the pilot's measured voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special passenger on board today. Captain Darren Harlow is escorting a fallen service member. We ask that you join us in a moment of respect for Private Avery Thompson, who gave her life serving our country." A hush fell over the plane, every conversation snuffed out like a candle. People turned in their seats, trying to catch a glimpse of the uniformed officer. Some pressed their hands over their hearts. Others bowed their heads. Even toddlers, too young to understand, quieted in the sudden reverence. Captain Harlow stood rooted to the spot, chest tight with emotion. He blinked back the sting in his eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected tribute. Riley, the flight attendant, brushed away tears of her own and led him to an empty seat in the front row. As he settled in, the cabin lights dimmed momentarily, and the plane's engines roared to life. Passengers remained silent, as if honoring one final poignant moment before takeoff. Harlow gazed out the window, heart pounding, thinking of Private Thompson's grieving family waiting in a small town miles away. Everything in him prayed this flight would be smooth, logistically, emotionally, spiritually. When the plane finally lifted off, ascending into the sky, Captain Harlow let out a shaky exhale. The chaos at the airport was behind him now. Despite the turmoil, he had secured one vital thing. Private Thompson would return home with dignity. That, more than anything, mattered. Still, as he closed his eyes and the plane climbed higher, he couldn't shake the question that had haunted him since the confrontation at the terminal. Would the world move on, treating this as a mere glitch? Or would it awaken people to the fact that respect for fallen soldiers must never be sidelined by bureaucracy? He didn't have the answer. But he knew Private Thompson, and every service member lost in the line of duty, deserved more than a quick apology and a meal voucher. They deserved unwavering honor. And, if necessary, a spotlight that refused to dim until accountability was brought to bear. Moved by Captain Harlow's determined fight for a fallen soldier's final honor. Show your support by sharing this story, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable moments. Together we honor those who served.